hoping this region will prosper from investment in transport through the Northern Powerhouse. But some businesses are worried about a different type of connectivity, digital. 95% of the country should have broadband within 2 years. But Phil McCann's been down on the farm in Cheshire to find out if the plan's good enough.
These days, farming isn't just done in the fields. This, known as the Circle of Doom, is as regular a sight as cows and sheep. These cows don't know it, but they've all got a passport. And that passport has to be managed online.
Lots to do. I don't want to be spending a lot of time waiting for stuff to load up.
Their owner Phil has to tell the government whenever a calf is born at his farm near Nantwich and whenever he sells one.
When you know a task should take very little time and you end up spending a long time doing something very simple, it's hugely frustrating. It's really a tax on your time. It's a disadvantage to the business because instead of being outside working, I'm in here getting frustrated and getting cross. And in a modern world where we're trying to run really quick, then that's a great disadvantage.
The average speed of a so-called super-fast broadband connection is around 15 megabits per second. Here, it's 0.2. A government scheme is bringing much better speeds to around 95% of the UK population, but of course that leaves 5% missing out, in places where the mobile phone signal is often pretty bad. The government does say it's finding ways of helping places like this. But communications in many parts of Cheshire have gradually come into the 21st century. Here in Tarporley there is super-fast broadband, but not enough. This online insurance provider pays thousands of pounds a year for its own dedicated line through 8 miles of countryside.
Basically prejudicing small areas like this that are nice to live in, nice to work in, and basically meaning that there'll be fewer jobs for local people and everyone will have to then work in a major city or major town.
And here in the Loon Valley outside Lancaster, locals have taken matters into their own hands. Normally, new fibre optic cables only go to the nearest telephone exchange, with the internet squeezed through old copper cables for the final distance to home. But in Hornby, a community company has laid its own fibre cables all the way.
We couldn't see any possibility that BT would provide a decent broadband service out to the rural areas. We got all funding from the community. We've had no government funding or anything. It's all been done by the community.
It means speeds in some of the most isolated parts of the county are some of the fastest in the UK.
Hello, I'm Arif Ansari, coming up in the northwest.
It just makes everything so easy. No matter what any of us want to do, the family want to do, we can just do it. It just works. It's wonderful.
This is one area where the Circle of Doom is a thing of the past.
Well, good to see Christine can now enjoy the programme, but we're joined by Rachel Neiman from Go On UK, a charity which campaigns for better digital opportunities and skills. Rachel, to begin with, how much does this matter?
It matters a lot to have adequate broadband provision right across the UK so that we don't have those spots where some people can achieve what they need to achieve digitally and others can't. And I think the other reason that it is so important is that it isn't just broadband that is essential, it's also having the digital skills and the access to the devices to be able to use that broadband effectively.
Is there actual clear evidence that where we don't have broadband, people are living less prosperously, that businesses aren't developing effectively?
Well, yes, from a productivity point of view, it's extremely difficult for a business to maintain its competitiveness if it doesn't have access to decent broadband, given now that in this digital age that we're living in, almost everything is dependent on having that level of communication speed.
So what do you want doing about it?
Well, we'd like to see broadband, a decent speed of broadband, universally available. And I think one of the things that we need to really campaign for is to make sure that we know what the minimum guaranteed speed is, not just what the speed could be up to, because there is a minimum point below which people will not be able to do the things that they need to do.
Well, let's bring Graham back in at this point. First of all, what do you say about what Rachel's saying, that we shouldn't be aiming for 95%, but 100%?
Well, I totally agree with Rachel. Connecting Cheshire have done a fantastic job since 2011, and we're up to 95% on average, but we are at 97% in Weaver Vale. But that 3%, as was clearly shown in that film, is the rural businesses and the farmers, which are vitally important.
But if you agree with it, why isn't it happening?
Because because BT has to step up to the plate, and that is something I am actively lobbying. Well, they do, and government has to do more. I have to do more. Cheshire West and Cheshire East need to do more to get BT to deliver that 100%. The biggest lobbyist group are my children, who tell me they can't do their homework, or I have a feeling it might be their export games. But it is, on a serious point, it is very important. Who would have thought 10 years ago this would be so important for rural communities? It is a vital thing to do for families, for businesses.
Connor, where do you think we're going right or wrong?
I think the government has given millions of pounds over the last number of years to BT to run a monopoly that is fragmented and fractured. The rollout has been entirely inconsistent. I think it's bad for consumers and it's bad for competition. I think universality has got to be the aim. Just a few weeks ago in my constituency...
But on that point, Connor, other than BT, does anybody else actually want to do this?
Well, there were 8 tenders, I believe, for the contracts, and they were skewed in a way by the government that in the end only BT could deliver those. So I think there is an appetite for more competition in the market in that regard. In semi-rural areas in my constituency, where people run businesses, people who are self-employed, where, as Graham said, children at school, students at university. In one case that was brought to me where the spouse of a member of the armed forces couldn't communicate with her loved one away. Broadband and adequate internet access is not a luxury, it's a necessity, and we do really need to get on with rolling this out universally.
What do you make about his point about BT having the monopoly?
Well, BT needs to be held to the fire now to commit to that. They were given the opportunity to give 100%. They said 97%, but we need to hold them to the fire for those rural communities. If you look at it, a lot of...
Do you think we should break up the monopoly then?
Well, I think we should consider that. But as I sit here in Cheshire, we've done a very good job connecting rural areas, but we still have a lot more to do to get that 3% connected.
Rachel, what do you make of what the two MPs have been saying?
Well, I think it is absolutely essential that we continue to roll out broadband as quickly as we possibly can. And I think that everybody understands and accepts that this is now a core utility for people, and that as more and more services and information move online, people are becoming increasingly disadvantaged if they can't transact their business or do their personal business online.
Rachel, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now it's time for the rest of the week's news. Here's Katie Walderman with 60 seconds.